Saishu Koi, The Demon Blade. Episode 1, The Fox's Den. Written and narrated by Jack Evers. The woods were the only place Luna could truly get away from everything. No fretting about classes and deadlines, no boss telling her that her work wasn't good enough, no parents down her throat about her grades and finances. In the woods, Luna could just wander to her heart's content. Far away from the rest of the world, she could just listen to the soothing sounds of nature and get away from the life that was bringing her down. Luna looked at her phone to check the time. 4:15. She had been walking for about half an hour when she decided to step off the trail and wander through the dense forest. She had been down this trail many times before, and she wanted to see something new. To Luna, it was almost like the forest was calling to her. Walking through the woods alone, it was almost therapeutic to Luna. She took in the sights around her. She saw an oddly shaped boulder, almost as big as her. Then she came across a few downed trees. The fungus growing on them made beautiful patterns, unlike anything human hands could ever weave. After walking a little further, she came across what appeared to be a fox's den. Luna looked at the den from afar to see if the fox was nearby. She could see no evidence that it was, so she got closer to the den to examine it. She took a good look inside the hole, but she saw something out of the ordinary. Rather than seeing a hoard of food or maybe a few kits, she saw a long, thin object that appeared to be made of shiny wood or maybe plastic. Curiosity got the best of Luna, and she decided to try and enter the den. Slowly she inched her way through the hole, just enough to get her fingertips to the object. She just barely managed to get a grip on it before pulling herself out. Luna took a second to pick herself up and clean off the dirt before looking at what she had just grabbed. She was shocked to see that the object was a sword. To be more exact, it was a katana. It was about 2 feet in length and clad in a deep red wooden scabbard. The scabbard had 4 Japanese kanji written on it. Though she had taken some Japanese lessons before, Luna could only read some basic hiragana. Her mind raced with confusion as to why this thing was here. Why would anyone leave such a random thing behind in a foxhole of all places? Was this never supposed to be found? Her mind raced with potentials until the thought entered her mind. Unsheath the katana. The thought, first a simple idea, amplified in her head. It was almost as if she had been possessed. She had barely formed a conscious thought before she grabbed the hilt and ripped it out of the scabbard. As soon as the blade left its wooden enclosure, the nerves in Luna's arms began to swell with some type of strange feeling. It was painful for a split second before she felt a relief and then a sense of power. All through her body, the feeling of sheer, unadulterated power coursed through her veins. The feeling of power caused her to stand straight up and bask in the sensation. It was as if her soul was imbued the power to conquer whatever she could imagine. The high from the power lasted for a few seconds before Luna came down. She took a second to reorient herself and take in her surroundings. After that trip, she had to take a minute to get her bearings straight. It was then that she heard a voice, almost as if it was coming from within her mind.
私はMuramasa Sengo。あなたが古子の弦が私の最後の声です。この葉を通してあんた
The voice trailed on within her mind, but she couldn't really make sense of it. Her Japanese just wasn't good enough to comprehend what the voice was saying. The only thing that she understood was the first part. I am Sengo Muramasa. But where was the voice coming from? Did the sword somehow put the voice of this Muramasa in her head? With the ecstasy of power she felt a second ago, it didn't seem like an unreasonable assumption. But how could that have been possible? As Luna was contemplating everything, she heard a shrill wail from behind her. She turned around to see a fox standing about 60 feet away from her. Upon seeing the fox, Luna backed away from its den. While backing up, she tried to sheath the katana, but found herself unable to. She thought she kept missing because her hands were quaking from fear and confusion. but then she saw that wasn't the case. Looking down at the sword, she saw that trying to sheath it, no matter how exact she was, caused the sword to fall out and go to the side of the scabbard. It was as if the katana and the scabbard were both magnets of the same polarity. No matter how hard she tried, they just couldn't join. Trying to drop it yielded similar results, with the hilt refusing to leave her hand. She kept her eyes trained on the fox when the voice returned to her head.
Usao single muramasa y estadia mina que voce en punha e mua tel final. Also considera voce grande poder.
This time, Luna wasn't even sure what language the voice was speaking. She could once again make out the words Sengo Muramasa. Was Muramasa the name of the sword, or of some otherworldly spirit? Luna again grew confused as she watched the fox. The fox began to inch towards her as she kept backing up. Taking a closer look at the fox, something looked off. Luna couldn't quite tell what was wrong with the fox, but something was out of the ordinary. It looked as if the sun didn't shine on its fur quite correctly, as if the fox was just some strange, out-of-place object that didn't belong in this environment. The fox then started to clamber towards her at a rapid pace. Luna panicked for a second before taking up a fighting stance with the sword, holding the blade forwards and near her head. The phrase, Kogasumi, floated up from the back of her mind. Luna had never even heard those words before, but somehow she knew what it was and how to execute it. She continued to hold the sword as the fox charged. She didn't want to hurt the fox, but she was scared that she might have to. As the fox lunged at her, Luna managed to gracefully sidestep it. It almost felt inhuman how fast she was. The fox, with the same speed and grace as Luna, jumped again for her face. She sidestepped it again, the fox missing her by a few inches. As it passed, its looks began to change. The fox's red coat changed to a matted white and gray one once it was close to her. What seemed to be blood dripped down around its neck. As soon as it landed, the fox's coat returned to its normal coloration. Luna thought she had imagined its change. The fox had only been near her for a split second, after all. The fox seemed to have landed strangely, as it collapsed and was writhing around on the ground. Was something actually different about this fox? Luna was planning her next move, when the voice spoke again.
I am Sengo Muramasa, and this blade you wield is my final act. I can grant you great power through this blade, but know that I will not grant it for free. If you wish to sheath this sword, you must first offer me the blood of a victim. If the day passes before you can do so, it will be your blood that I take.
Luna struggled to take it all in. She had to kill something to sheath the sword? She tried to consider what would count as a victim's blood, but the fox had gotten back up. She took up the Kogasumi stance once again, ready if the fox came at her. The fox gave another shriek before again lunging. Luna was again able to dodge at an inhuman speed. Was this part of the great power Muramasa was talking about? The fox again landed poorly and writhed on the ground. As Luna stared at the creature, she had an idea.
Muramasa, can you speak to me?
She spoke into the air, hoping for a response. Luna felt like an idiot just shouting into the air, but it was the only way she could think to communicate with the voice. After waiting for around 10 seconds, Luna began to give up hope of a response until the voice came back inside her mind.
What is it you want to hear?
As much as Luna hoped it would work, she was still surprised when it did. She took a second to think about her words. As many questions as she had about the katana and why this was happening, she knew the fox was the biggest priority.
Why did the fox become gray and bloodied when I got closer to it?
Again, Muramasa waited to reply. It was as if he was trying to keep Luna in suspense.
That is no fox. At one time it was, but it is a fox no longer. It is an Onryo, a vengeful husk of its former self, enraged about its own demise. It only cares to lash out and destroy. You would be best to eliminate it.
Muramasa called the fox an Onryo? Luna wasn't quite sure what that meant. From his description, Muramasa made it sound like it was some type of ghost. Luna had never been a believer in ghost stories, but by this point she had lost her sense of doubt. Heeding Muramasa's word, she knew what she had to do. The fox had risen once again. It let out another screech, this time sounding angrier. Luna remained steadfast as it began to approach her. The fox attempted to lunge at her throat a third time. Rather than sidestep it like before, Luna swung the katana right at its midsection. The fox fell to the ground at Luna's feet. Its coat remained a matted gray as it squirmed in pain. Not only was it cut in its midsection, the blood around its neck also appeared to be from a large cut. Maybe that was how it died before. Not long after, it began to crumble into dust and fade with the wind. As it faded, Luna began to process what just happened. It made her feel strangely excited, like a strange sense of victory had given her an incredible rush. She knew that killing the fox was wrong, but it had just felt incredible, a greater joy than anything she had felt before. Luna sat down on a nearby tree stump. She had to rest after what she had just gone through. She tried to sheath the sword, but again failed to do so. Did the fox not count as the blood of a victim? After taking a minute to think, she had more questions for Muramasa.
Muramasa, how did that fox become what word did you use?
Muramasa's voice responded inside her head.
An Onryo. It became one after Saishu Koi was used to take the fox's life. It was a husk kept alive only by its sheer rage and lust for revenge. Onryo despise Saishu Koi and seek to keep it from humanity at all costs.
Saishu Koi? What's that?
It is the name of the blade you wield. I emblazoned it on the sheath. Could you not read it?
No, I can't read kanji. I barely speak Japanese. What does it translate to in English?
Saishu Koi is the name I gave this blade, and that is the only name you shall call it. Calling a blade by another name is an insult to the craftsman who forged it. If you must know, the name translates into your European tongue as Final Act.
Luna took a minute to think about Muramasa's words. The explanations he had given had only raised more questions. If Onryo wanted to keep the sword away from humans, would more of them come for her? Muramasa said that he had named the katana Saishu Koi, with him being strangely insistent on the name. Did he mean that he had forged it? How was Muramasa talking to her anyways? The more she thought, the more questions piled up in her mind. There was one critical thing that Muramasa had said that Luna almost tried to forget. If you wish to sheath this sword, you must first offer me the blood of a victim. She didn't want to think about what that might entail. Did she simply have to cut someone with the sword? Could it be a small nick, or did it have to be a deep cut? Or would she have to... Luna didn't even want to consider that possibility, but she remembered the consequences that Muramasa laid out if she failed. How would Muramasa take her blood? She needed clarification and spoke into the air again to talk to Muramasa.
When you said that I needed the blood of a victim to sheath the sword, does that mean I have to wound someone, or do I have to,
What do you think?
Muramasa snapped.
Drive the blade into a person's beating heart and end them. You have 24 hours from the time you drew the blade. If you cannot do such a simple task, you are not at all worthy of the powers that Saishu Koi can grant.
Oh no, this was what she had feared. The worst crime Luna had ever committed was torrenting a movie. How was she going to kill a person? Luna knew the consequences. Not only would Muramasa kill her, but she feared the possibility of becoming an Onryo like the fox, walking the earth as a raging husk of her living self, only wanting to seal the sword away from humanity. Luna knew she couldn't let such a brutal fate befall her. She stood up and began to walk in circles, the katana swinging in her hand. She needed to consider her next actions. She knew she couldn't just walk into public with a samurai sword out. so she would have to stay hidden. The sun was going to set in a few hours, which would give her the cover of darkness. But who was she going to kill? Her mind jumped between the people she hated. Her computer science professor, her ex, the cruel bus driver from when she was a kid. All of them were people that Luna would be happy to never see again. But each one came with more questions. How could she get away with it? Would she have to hide the body? Would Saishu Koi's power allow her to defend herself from an officer's gunfire and let her live as an outlaw? While contemplating her next move, Muramasa's voice spoke to her again.
You continue to dawdle on this most important task. I can sense that there are no people nearby, so you must go back to civilization if you want to complete your mission. But if this is all you choose to do, you would be better to plunge Saishu Koi into your stomach right now rather than forcing me to do it later.
As frightened as she was by Muramasa's threat, Luna knew that he was right. She had been making no progress for a while now. She checked the time on her phone. 5:45. If the sun set at 6:30, then she would have the cover of darkness to make her move once she left the forest. Luna began to make her way back to the trail, with night soon to fall. She thought that no other hikers would be using the trails. She figured that now would be a good time to ask Muramasa about the sword's history and its powers.
Muramasa, when was Saishu Koi made?
10 bungo.
Luna waited for a second, waiting for him to add on to that strange answer. When he didn't say anything further, she considered asking him what he meant by that. However, she decided to ask other questions.
Okay, why does its name mean final act?
What reason do I have to tell you? Complete your mission and that will be reason enough for me to trust you with my story. Until then, you are an unproven warrior who should be focused only on securing a kill.
Muramasa was entirely unhelpful. Luna gave up and walked in silence toward the trail when she saw a person walking through the woods. She tried to hide behind the tree and wait him out. His footsteps slowly began to get louder as Luna realized he was approaching her. She tried to hide behind a large fallen tree when she caught a glimpse of him about 90 feet away. His skin was gray and his clothes were tattered. He had long, jet-black hair that obscured his face. Luna looked at his stomach and was horrified to see a large gash. His intestines were visible, but rather than the red she expected, they were a deep black. Luna continued to hide when Muramasa gave her a command.
Do not hide from it. It is another Onryo when it must be slain. Go forth and kill it.
Did you kill him?
Yes, its name in life was George Miller. He came to possess Saishu Koi by accident, much like you. He could not bring himself to kill, so I slew him like the coward he was. Do not worry, this will not be a difficult battle for you.
Maybe you wouldn't have to worry about Onryo if you didn't make them. He currently isn't threatening me, so why should I kill him? It's you he wants anyway, right?
You are correct in that it wants Saishu Koi. However, the only way for it to get the katana is to pry it from your dead hands. We have a common goal. I don't wish to be sealed and hidden away for years on end, and you don't wish to become an Onryo. We can easily kill it. Please do so, or you will soon resemble that beast.
Luna thought for a moment. As much as she was scared by the Onryo and by Muramasa, killing the fox was a rush that she had loved, despite what she had gone through. She wanted that feeling back. Plus, she wasn't really about to kill a person. Muramasa had already done that part. The Onryo began to make horrible gurgling noises, reminiscent of its terrible death. Luna confidently took the stance Chudan no Kame and began to rush at the Onryo. Written, narrated, and edited by Jack Evers. Script edited by Val Farrell. Voice of Luna, provided by Val Farrell. Voice of Muramasa provided by Jack Evers. Music provided by YouTube Audio Library. Sound effects provided by freesound.org.